Welcome everyone to another episode of Independent Artists Unite Song Series. I'm super psyched tonight to have Amulet here, Stephanie and Michael. Welcome.
Thank you.
Hi, Scott. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you. Thanks
You
for
know,
having us.
I found out about you guys from this, the digital zine that Renee did, for the Nocturna zine, which I thought was such a cool idea that everyone was, that everyone was talking. I mean, it wasn't like an interview. You guys were like describing your own thing, which I thought was a cool twist, because you really get an idea for, the personalities and stuff like that, which is cool. So I really enjoyed that. I thought that was a great thing that Renee did.
We like Renee. He's a good guy.
Yeah, he is. He is.
Yeah. He's devoted to the scene. We really like that.
Yeah, it's wonderful. Yeah, and I'm so happy, in the wake of Procession Magazine's demise, that he's really been working hard to fill the void there, which is super cool.
Definitely.
It is.
Yeah.
You're dead right.
Well, we're glad that you found out about is that how you found out about us?
Yeah, that's how I found out about you. Yeah.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah, so it's cool. Wow, Stephanie, your voice. That was the first thing that hit me.
Thank you. That's nice. What song did you hear first?
The first song I heard is this we'll air this when this comes out. Yeah, when winter comes.
Great.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
And so congratulations on the release of When Winter Comes, because this will be out when I post this. How did this song come about? Because it's an interesting you guys describe it in an interesting meld of influences in the Nocturnazine bio, all of which I can kind of hear in this song, with the addition of, I could almost feel like this could be a James Bond theme. This song is so epic.
That would be awesome.
So you said this song had been around for a while, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so the song started, I don't know, I used to like to watch Game of Thrones, so like there's so many Game of Thrones references in our song titles that have nothing to do with what the song's about, really. But they're always talking about when winter's going to come, and all that in Game of Thrones, and somehow those lyrics kind of rattled around in my brain. And the song started off, I was in Anchorage, Alaska in June of not 1921, 2021. It might have been 1921, but it was actually, it feels like 1921. This song's been going forever. 2021.
A good place for winter. A very good place.
Yeah, well, it was. And there's a particular type of crow that lives in that part of the world, which is called the northwestern crow. And for ornithologists, they're all obsessed with these specific species of crows and so forth. So I wanted to go and see the northwestern crow. And it turns out that the northwestern crow is best found at a gas station forecourt south of Anchorage, Alaska. So I found myself driving down to this gas station to find this particular species of crow, the northwestern crow, which is no longer considered a species of crow, unfortunately. Kind of like Pluto has been relegated from the planets. The northwestern crow is no longer a full crow. It's
officially a crow.
Oh. It's a partial crow now. It's a subspecies of crow. But anyway, at the time, it was a big deal. So I went down into this garage forecourt, and for some reason, this song popped in my head, and I got so excited about it. I called Stephanie from the garage forecourt and said, "Hey, I've got this song idea." I can't even remember the phone call other than I made it. Can you remember what I said? Can you even remember the phone call?
Yeah, I remember the call.
What did I say?
You were talking about all the different
crows. I was talking about the crows mostly. It was mostly about the crows.
Yeah, just side note, he's like a big bird guy. So he's been literally all over the world just looking for birds. So that's why he was doing this.
Yeah.
But Yeah, so that was a goth expedition. So I guess you were starting to write a goth song
Yeah.
looking for these special crows.
So it started off there for whatever reason, like songs, I don't know. I mean, they just kind of pop in your head and then you listen to them
Yeah.
after and you go, did I write that? Oh my goodness. It's like, where
Yeah.
did that come from? And frankly, I have no clue, but it just popped in my brain and I felt excited about it. I called Stephanie up from the Crow site and we started off like that,
Yeah, it's true.
basically.
That's how it started.
Yeah, it was.
And it's just now ending.
Thank goodness it's ending. Please
2
be
years
over.
later, over the 2
Please
years
be
later.
over. This has taken the longest time to do this song. It's just taken forever. It's had like fits and starts, but part of the issue was we had all these remixes done, right? So Stephanie, why don't you talk about the remix? Do you want us to talk about the remixes? Can we talk about the remixes?
Well, I don't want to skip so quickly over this gas station.
Yeah,
all right.
that's important.
We can go back there. A lot happened there.
I feel like maybe like Johnny Depp in like Sleepy Hollow, might be pumping gas there or something.
It was an interesting gas station. There were definitely a lot of interesting people over there. There were a lot of I think there's some Hells Angels there. There were a few people seemed to live there. It was an interesting spot. I fell in a hole actually while I was there as well, which wasn't the greatest thing.
Is this a metaphor or was this
no, it really happened. It really happened. There was a big hole and it was grassy and it looked pretty good, but then the grass was really wet, so I went like super flying in this hole. But by that time I was okay, because the first time I went there were no crows there. It was too late at night. It was too late. They'd all gone to roost. And the next day I went back and it was full of crows. They're all over the place. I was very, very happy. Fell in the hole. I wasn't too worried about it because I was, happy with the crows. They were all over the place. And then the song popped in my head and I called Stephanie. So it ended up being a fairly good afternoon.
That's what I was going to ask. Like, did the song come in your head after you fell down the hole?
I sort of think I was working on it in the car on the way down there, but it's like our other song, Last Ditch. We've lost how we wrote it somehow. We lost how we wrote it. We kind of generally know, but like the early takes, we don't have them anymore.
Oh,
and what happened?
You fell in a ditch.
It was a ditch. It wasn't it was more like a ditch than a hole. It was a slippy, grassy ditch hole that I slipped into, but it wasn't very damaging. It didn't break anything.
You just got an epiphany.
I was trying to photograph one of the crows, which wasn't sitting still.
Oh.
Crows don't sit still, as happens. When you try and photograph them, off they go. It's what they do. They don't like to sit there.
All I'm thinking is that I really hope that I can spend a whole evening with you sometime, Michael.
That would be delightful. It's delightful. Where are you?
I'm in Denmark.
Denmark. Good. Well, we should come to Copenhagen then and hang out and look for crows. There's several different species over there that you'll be delighted to see.
Yeah. Well, we got some. Well, I guess all crows are large, aren't they? But we do have some big ones.
Most, yeah. Well, being goths, we're very interested in crows in particular. Right. It's my spirit bird, but and ravens. People often don't know the difference between crows and ravens, but we are like crow raven central. If you need to ID crows and ravens, this is the place. We'll help you. We got it. We got it over here.
Can you give us just the top things that distinguish ravens and crows?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Well, there's always more detail, right? But like we're talking about common raven here. Let's focus on the common raven. Yeah. Okay. Ravens are larger than crows. They got longer wings and longer tails. So they kind of look like a cross in the air. And they're also more aerobatic usually. And they will do little jinky flights where they switch around in the air and they look like they can really fly. And crows are a little bit less so on that. And then they have a shaggy little throat when you see them sitting. And they dance with each other as well, both in the air and on the ground. And then they have a much deeper, more guttural call. Than crows.
It sounds like gravels in their throat.
Yeah, but
instead of saying corn, like crows do, say corn.
Yeah, they're just very cronky. But long tails, long wings, that's usually the best thing. And then they're usually doing some kind of little aerobatic maneuvers that show off their abilities.
We're going to do a YouTube video about this so we can educate.
Oh, awesome. Yeah.
Yes.
And is it true the crows about them wanting to find shiny objects and things like that? Or is that
Oh yeah, no, it's
Old
true.
wives' tale.
Magpies are particularly
Magpie.
they
Oh,
like to put it
magpies do that.
they like to put it in their nests, you know.
I'm like
Oh,
So
that's
that.
right. That's magpies, not
yeah,
crows, isn't it?
yeah, we got a
Oh.
magpie of a human magpie.
I like sparkly
Human
items.
magpie. Yeah.
Um, and how do you feel about, are you a fan of the movie, the original The Crow movie?
Me
As
personally,
a goth ornithologist.
I like the movie. Yeah, I feel like I've seen it a couple of times. I mean, obviously the story associated with it is pretty tragic. Sorry that that happened.
Yeah.
But it's a good movie. It's a
I
good.
just listened to that soundtrack like yesterday.
I mean,
That was
you
a
know,
great soundtrack. Yeah.
there's
Yes,
a
it
lot there's a
was.
lot of good revenge movies out there. Um,
Yeah.
and those of us who, you know, like to witness revenge but live vicariously through it since we wouldn't really do it ourselves. I guess that's a good movie for you if you like to live out your revenge vicariously.
Mm.
True.
And there's, because there's a remake coming out too. I don't know
Oh, there
why they
is.
keep trying to
Yeah.
remake yeah, yeah, with
True.
with
Hmm.
the
like
Skarsgård brother,
Yeah.
Bill
Really?
Skarsgård. Yeah, he
He
played the
looked
clown. He
okay.
played the clown in It. You know.
Hmm.
I thought he looked okay.
Might be tough to beat the original. I
Of
don't know.
course it will.
We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see. It's like you don't really
It's not
remake.
it's not beatable. Yeah, I don't know
Yeah.
why they bother. It's not beatable,
You don't remake make the
especially
movie.
when something tragic happened like that. Unfortunately, it adds to the legend of the whole thing, and
Yeah,
that's just left alone, I think. But
possibly. Well, people are going to do what they're
wow,
going to
this
do.
is very interesting.
Yes. Deep.
I was a big Game of Thrones fan too, but I was wondering, like the winter in this, like was almost I was wondering if it was like the winter, like kind of like the cooling off or the like of a relationship or the end of a relationship, and then I thought maybe this is like a nuclear winter. I could also picture like a video that was like totally end of the world nuclear winter. So
Well, we've discussed this kind of stuff a lot, and I think the beauty of lyrics is that you can kind of derive your own meaning from them, and if they mean something to you, then that's really what counts. And maybe the original meaning is different, but for most of lyrics that I write, Stephanie might be a little different. She can answer for herself, but the lyrics that I write tend to have kind of fragments of lots of different emotions and lots of different situations that aren't necessarily telling one particular story, but it can be kind of a combination of fragments of different things that kind of just get pieced together into one song. But in this case, winter, I mean, you can interpret winter as the moment. There's a moment. So the song begins with Stephanie singing it. She's basically, going through this kind of meltdown in this relationship moment where she is saying, screw you, I'm right, you're wrong, when you're leaving, get out, don't bother coming back, sort of thing. She doesn't use all those words, but that's kind of the vibe.
yeah.
And then at some point, the kind of the portcullis, we like to use the portcullis because I'm English, the portcullis comes down, and she sort of realizes, oops, here I am on my own, and the heat of the moment evaporates, and she's having this realization that she's now needing to kind of make amends here somehow, and that she didn't mean it, and that she's willing to compromise finally when she was sort of laying down the law at the beginning, because there are consequences. And I don't know if you've been through this kind of situation in a relationship where you felt like you were very angry, like you were just at a point, and then afterwards you regret what you say, or you regret the situation, and you want to make amends for it, but then you always allow a little bit of your soul to get torn away every time you make that compromise. And then the question is, how much of your soul are you willing to have torn off to make those compromises with that person or with any person over time? Or how much are you just going to be like, okay, this is it, forget you all, I'm going to be right, but I'll be here on my own little island, and the rest of you can go off and be on your own little island and be happy over there. So it's just one of those. It's kind of one of those questions. Did you ever see the movie Aguirre Wrath of God with Klaus Kinski? If you haven't seen it, it's. I'm going to warn you.
Is
It's
that
kind
is that where he's like is he a soldier in that one?
yeah, yeah, he
In the
is. Yeah,
jungle, yeah.
He's a Spanish conquistador
Yeah.
in search of El Dorado, you know, the gold of the Incas, and he has this sort of ragtag group of people going down the Madre de Dios, actually in Peru. It's a place there are birds there, not crows. There's no crows in South America. The birds there.
There are birds
So
there.
I've been there. And so he goes with this ragtag group, and slowly but surely, you know, he kills them all. And finally, at the end of the movie, I'm sorry I'm giving away what happens, but he's on this raft drifting down the Madre de Dios. And, you know, he's the king. He's finally the king because everybody else is dead. And he's on this raft and he's surrounded by monkeys, and he's the king of the monkeys. He is finally in charge.
Right.
But all he's in charge of is his raft and the monkeys, and everybody else he couldn't compromise. He killed them all. And so that's kind of the thing, you know. Are you willing to compromise with other people in relationships or elsewhere, or are you going to sit on your own raft and be the king or the queen of the monkeys? And so I suppose at the end of the day, that's the question in when winter comes, as to what degree are you willing to give up part of yourself in order to compromise to get what you want from someone else. But Stephanie will have a completely different explanation of the song, I'm sure.
I don't know.
I'm wondering if after you described that, Michael, I'm wondering if you may be approaching my tally of broken marriages.
Well, I've had a few relationships.
Just one or two.
I'm very reasonable. I'm a very, very reasonable person.
I'm heading into my fourth marriage.
Very willing to compromise. Very compromising.
I think now, only now, I have to say, only now. I really relate to that, though. Yeah, really relate to that.
I talk too much. I want to hear from Stephanie what her view is.
What do you want me to say?
Well, I mean,
let's talk about your vocal background, because I was so astonished by the power of your vocals. It reminded me of someone that you didn't mention, like in the influences, but it's got this like Ann Wilson of Heart, power to it, where it's really clear tone, but then it gets a little colored, almost like a rock and roll little scream color to it on the top there, and but it's super powerful a vocal. And
Thank you.
how did you discover that you had this instrument?
I don't have a vocal background at all.
Yeah.
Really. I guess the long story short is that I kind of just had my mom is a musician and she did stuff at church, so I was like a church kid, and I did a little bit of singing at church, and then I screwed up on stage and I didn't sing until I was like 19. So when I was 19, I went to the bar and did some karaoke after some drinks, and I was like, hey, this is actually fun. I forgot about singing. And then I just did karaoke every so often.
Do you remember what that first karaoke song was that when you first sang again?
Yeah, it was Rock and Roll Suicide by David Bowie.
Nice.
Yeah. So I thought that was fun. That probably no one else knew the song at that bar, but I enjoyed myself anyway. And then we were working at the same place like years later, and we started a work band, which was like a cover band with work-friendly songs. And I said, I guess I can sing. It's just a work band. I don't, whatever. And that's how that started. So I just kept singing ever since then. Yeah, that's what happened. And then we started Amulet.
And were you in previous bands, Michael?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I've been in a few bands. I've got more bands than you've had marriages, actually, Scott.
Yeah, well, me too.
And they all broke up as well.
Yeah.
But Yeah, that's what happens to bands, you know. I mean, it's difficult to get along with people for long
Similar
periods
thing,
of
right?
time.
Compromises, yeah.
Yeah, and especially, you know, if you're in a marriage, it's only with one other person. When you're in a band, you have to get along with, you know, 5 or 4 or 3 or whatever it is,
Yeah.
And their spouses.
and sometimes their spouses, and
Yeah.
it can be
Mm.
difficult to keep them together for long term. But yeah, I've been in a number of
And their
bands.
drugs. So
Yes, that's a part of the family too. Hard to deal with sometimes.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, so that's how I discovered singing. It's not an amazing story, but I'm just doing what I
well, I
do.
think it's an amazing story because it's interesting that you had this experience where you just said, okay, no, that's it. So then I think there was like
Yeah,
this percolation happening, you know. And
I
then
guess so.
that when you let it loose, you did a real roar.
Yeah, it feels pretty natural to do it. I don't even get stage fright or anything, which is surprising after my traumatic experience at church. But it's just fun. I guess there's no pressure, really. It's not like my job, so that helps.
Yeah, audiences are very forgiving as well for live performance.
Yeah.
There's a big difference between live performance and recording. In recording, the precision that you have to put into your playing is very much greater. Live performances, people don't necessarily notice mistakes. And if you have some experience, you can usually paper over them pretty quickly so that people won't notice them, even if you do make them. But recorded music is completely different. It requires a huge level of precision, which
Yeah.
live does not.
It's true. And repetition a lot.
And where do you guys record things? Is it a oh well you had also said that this came out of like a lockdown situation, right? Like it was kind of a COVID lockdown gestation.
The
So
band
you have
itself.
a yeah.
Yeah.
So do you guys have a home studio where I assume you did record everything or?
Yes.
Yeah, well, we've actually done stuff all over the place, but right now we've got a studio and we record here. It's easy, really these days because, you know, it's digital interface, and
Yeah.
so for electric instruments, which we use a lot of electric bass, electric guitar, keyboards. You know, you can't have any really signal degradation if you just record straight into your interface. So, you know, we can record it all here.
Yeah.
Vocals is a different matter. It's important to have really good microphones. It's important to have a good vocal booth, and also it's important to have somebody you can work with well on recording vocals.
Mm.
Drums, live drums are also a very different beast. Drums are very difficult to record well compared to the other instruments. But we have a drummer we're working with, Dan Milligan. He's a drummer and producer in Chicago at the moment, and Dan does all of the recording. He's got his drum set up at his home studio for recording, so that works great. So we actually, you know, we're fairly virtual in the regard that I do pretty much all of the bass, guitars, keyboards, and synth and stuff here, and then Dan adds drums and some production elements, and then Stephanie she basically will record all the vocals with. We have one producer we like to work with, Devin Spear, who just moved to Nashville. But we'll probably, for the stuff we're working on now, we'll probably go down to Nashville and finish off most of the vocals with Devin, because Stephanie likes working with Devin and seems like a good idea to keep, because it ain't broke, so we don't need to fix it.
Yeah. It's definitely really important to have a good vocal engineer. I think it makes it so much easier and faster, and just it's already hard enough to do that kind of thing like over and over and over.
Yeah, I mean, feeling comfortable with someone is priceless for sure.
Yes.
When it comes to a vocal performance, yeah.
It's totally different doing vocal takes from doing, say, bass takes or guitar takes, because, you know, you're putting all your emotion and energy into it, and the voice, you know, has got a limit to how many takes you want to do. And yeah, I mean, eventually you can kind of burn your fingers out if you have to play a solo too many times, but really it's not the same league. I mean, you can kind of virtually unlimited takes on guitar and bass and keyboards compared to vocals.
Yeah, it's like running. You can't just keep running until you
keep running. Yeah.
Yeah. biology.
Now, another cool thing I like about this song is it's building, it's building. There's a guitar solo, and you think, where else can this go? And then whose idea was it for this needs a saxophone solo? Right?
I'm sure it was my idea. Was it? I can't remember.
Probably it was your idea, yeah, because you've
The
always
sax.
been saying about, Sisters has this sax with all the reverb that you like. So yeah.
I mean, I always love a sax in a pop or rock song, man. That's epic. I love it.
Yeah, it actually
Good.
the sax solo started off. I played it as a guitar solo to start with, and there was like, yeah, we already got a guitar solo. We can't have two guitar solos in one song. What else? Yeah, there we go.
That must have been like, let's make it a sax solo.
Yeah,
That must have been the moment.
yeah,
Yeah, I'm sure we're gonna do that again at some point.
yeah.
I can't help myself. I used to play saxophone in 7th grade, so I'm sure
Oh,
something
there you
stuck
go.
with
Okay.
me. But
I
that was
see.
my,
I was sitting right behind you playing trumpet. I was in the
oh,
school
okay.
orchestra playing trumpet. Yeah. I was friends with the saxophone players that they sat right in front of me.
Nice.
Oh yeah, and there's another thing about the song as well, because like later on, there's the sax solo, and then Stephanie towards the end of the song, she's really belting it out, and there's the sax underpinning that. And we were over at Rob Early's place. Remember Rob Early from 11 Grams, and
Oh, yeah.
he's been doing production work with us, and I was like, this bass is kind of right, but I could do something else. And so I just sat down and jammed something on the bass right there on the spot, and Rob recorded it. And we're like, oh yeah, that works. So we just slotted all that in, so that there's a bass break under the sax towards the end, which it's roving all around, and that was just like an impromptu jam that we did at Rob's studio, and it was like, yeah, that's gonna work. So like drop that into the track, and it sort of stuck.
Yeah.
So that was kind of fun.
It's cool.
Yeah.
It's epic.
It is epic, and it's actually, you know what, it was I've said this before on the show, but I went many years like not listening to much music, right? Because I was like really trying to become, super, super, super successful and famous rock star, for many years. And
Mhm.
I felt like I couldn't listen to other people. I was like, no, I must stay. I can't be, influenced. And now I've been doing this show where I'm listening to all this new music, and I'm just like enjoying it so much. And when I like put your guys' song on, it was just fun to listen to. That's like a really cool thing, because it reminded me, I'm like, there's something about this that feels to me like a throwback to the 80s, but I don't really know what it is.
I
And I
wonder
think
what it is.
it's fun to listen to. You know
Oh,
what I
that's
mean?
nice.
That's great.
I don't think
Love it.
like I don't think people really are a lot of times are thinking about, is this fun to listen to? The different elements that this, almost like it's not like it's not like there's like it's a comedy or a joke in there, but there's like a wink, like a wink, to have this sax solo, or the wink to have this really dramatic vocal, and there's just so many like fun elements there where you can just like be entertained, you know what I mean? And it's fun, which reminds me of the 80s, of my favorite all my favorite bands of the 80s, where they were serious about it, but there was a wink wink in there too,
Yes. Michael, that's just like him all over that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
transparently
Yeah, I
80s.
can't escape the 80s. God, I just cannot do it. Yeah.
No, you can't. That's why you made your own
But
remix.
yeah, because like we wanted to talk about the remixes. The remixes are so cool. I don't know if you've heard the
Yeah.
remixes yet, but you might like the remixes. Like there's one. Do you know the band Yazoo?
Oh, of course. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm synth pop all the way,
Okay. So we have a remix which is called the Upstairs at Eric's remix.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And it's supposed to be a homage to bands such as Yazoo, which I always liked the album Upstairs at Eric's. I thought it was great. I learned recently that Alison Moyet and the keyboard gentleman's name is going to
Vince
escape me.
Clark. Yeah.
Yeah,
He's way more famous than her.
Yeah, I know. He's from
Vince Clark,
Depeche Mode, right? He was in Depeche Mode at one
yeah.
point, but they didn't really know each other all that well, right?
Hmm.
And it turns out that they barely met that much, and they're about to have some kind of reunion tour, I think.
Is that right? Wow. Yeah.
I think so, yeah. Which would be really cool.
Actually, Alison Moyer and you, Stephanie, are not, are not worlds apart. That's for sure. Yeah. And I was always a huge fan of her vocals, but yeah, it was
Maybe it worked
that was
then.
just that was a really crazy pairing all of a sudden, of this voice of Alison Moyer with these arpeggio synths and stuff.
Yeah.
I thought it was a weird remix at first, but it sounds really cute
Well,
what you did.
yeah, what happened was that Stephanie wanted to get some remixes done. So you asked William Faith first, right?
Yeah.
So he did one which is really cool. It's kind of a really gothy kind of version. And then Dan Milligan, who we're working with and is in this group Joy Thieves, did this kind of really kind of down south vampire kind of blues rock kind of version, which is really cool. And we can't do this without having some kind of synth poppy sort of remix of it. And eventually I'm just like, I don't know who's going to do it. I'll just do it. So we sat down there and we started doing this thing, and then it started coming together. And then Rob Early again helped out, because I'm not like super good at mixing and engineering. I'm just like, okay, let's try this and try that. And then Rob kind of brought it together and made it good. So yeah, and it came out, we like it. It came out great.
It's fun.
It's not exactly like Yazoo, but hopefully you'll like get the gist. Like,
A little bit, yeah. No, I know what you mean. I know what you mean.
So Yazoo.
It's funny because I have the latest single I have out called Fate, and then there's another song on it called The Visitor that I was thinking about Yazoo also. With that, I was like saying I want to write this like torch ballad, that's like part Yazoo and part Lamal, like Never Ending Story type,
Yeah.
something that's totally over the top,
Yeah, I remember.
I love that stuff.
I used to go to Heaven in Charing Cross down by Trafalgar Square in London back in the day. And one time I was in there and Lamal was in there.
Oh yeah.
In the upstairs bar, but I didn't have the courage to go up to him and say hello, so I didn't get to meet him. But I saw him sitting over there in the corner. I'm like, wow, it's Lamal. It's cool.
We're gonna have like a series on our YouTube channel where he tells these stories, but you're really gonna have to amp that story up.
Yeah, but honestly, Lamal was great, but I would prefer to have met Nick Beggs, honestly, because he is absolutely an amazing bassist. Really just outstanding. Yeah.
That
would have been
in Kajagoogoo.
Yeah. And he still does session work. He's just excellent, really, really high class bass player. He's got it all.
I can't think of what the name of the club is now in London where that Boy George and Spandau Ballet came out of the beat. Is it?
I always used to go to Camden Palace and Heaven mostly back in the 80s, and I'm not sure. They came a little bit after Spandau Ballet, not as much, but Boy George a little bit after I was mostly clubbing in London. Most it was like Steve Strange was like the big.
Oh yeah, Steve Strange was the guy of this club. Yeah.
That was Camden Palace.
Oh, was it? Okay.
He was the main.
It was called something else.
Well, he may have had other clubs as well. I'm not sure, but Camden Palace was the one that he was most known for, at least when I was going out. And it was an old theater, and it had these different balconies. And Steve Strange was always up on the balcony, so you could see him from a distance, at least who I think he was. But we were never up in the balcony. We were always down in the cheap seats, kind of thing, on the dance floor mostly.
Well, we could probably trade stories all night, Michael, because I have that, but New York City, the New York City version.
Cool, that would be great.
So for me, it was the Squeeze Box. I don't know if you ever made it to Squeeze Box in New York.
I have not.
It was a really fun place like that. It was like a rock and roll drag, like queer friendly party on Friday nights that was hosted by Mistress Formica, a drag queen from New York, and Sherry Vine, and but they had I mean, it's like kind of like karaoke, but it was with a live band, and the drag queens, instead of like lip syncing, people actually sang, with the Squeeze Box band. So it was very rock and roll,
Cool.
and
That's
it was
fun.
like you'd always see like John Waters in there and Deborah Harry and also models like Helena Christensen and other like models that were a bit rock and roll, um, and you never know who was going to jump on stage and play,
Sounds
like
awesome.
Green Day jumped up there and played one night, just grabbed the instruments, they just started playing impromptu set. So it
That's
was,
great.
yeah,
What
it was
what
a
do you
great
play,
time.
Scott? What do you play?
Well, I'm principally a singer, and these days I write songs on keyboard,
Hmm.
But back then I played rhythm guitar and sang. I wrote most of my songs on the guitar. Yeah, but
Cool.
I'm very like well, I call it like I relate to the anthemic quality of you guys because I've been saying that I do anthemic synth pop, It's like
Nice.
it just
Cool.
keeps building to these ridiculous things. And I've always been a crooner, big David Bowie uh fan from my youth. So
Yeah, we need to go and
always
do
been my thing.
karaoke together, all three of us.
Yeah,
That would be a
That would be
that
blast.
would be
fun.
great. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
But
we
I
love
would have
to.
died if I saw you do Rock and Roll Suicide. Or I would have just like
Yeah.
come up and been like this.
We actually sometimes host like a goth karaoke here in DC, so it's super fun.
Yeah.
We like karaoke. It's
Yeah.
fun.
Oh,
Yeah.
that'll be cool. I'm gonna get to like visit Renee down there in DC sometime. So we'll hook it up. I
That'd be
wanna see Renee
excellent.
face to face because I really like bonded with him over the last year. Um,
That's
Terrific.
but I want to thank you guys so much for doing this, and I really love what you guys are doing. And and yeah, let's keep in touch. And I just one last question, Michael. What
Hmm.
is the bird you haven't seen that you want to see? It's the top of your
Uh,
bird bucket
uh,
list.
well, right now I should be in Bolivia. I was in Bolivia,
Well, shouldn't we all?
and then one of our group got COVID and we had to come back. But right now I should be at 14,000 feet at Lago Colorado in southwestern Bolivia, watching James's flamingos doing their breeding displays. And they live only in the high altiplano of Bolivia, Chile, and Argentina. And I was supposed to be there today, but
Oh.
instead I'm here, and I'm really pleased to be here. But you've got that beautiful pink background,
Yeah,
which
maybe.
is reminding me of those flamingos. So that's what we
I also
got.
have this nose.
Yeah, well, I got a competition for nose competition if you want. You can't really see it there, but we have to get the tape measure out and measure the noses now because
Oh, is that the new thing?
yeah, it is. Yeah,
That's the new thing. Yeah.
it's more
What are you
radio.
packing in that nose? Yeah.
It's more radio friendly to measure the noses. Yeah, that's the direction to go in
Well,
here.
there are some that say that the nose is related to other appendages. So
They do say
who
that.
knows? Who knows?
I'm sure there's studies done on that. Yeah.
All right, guys. Pleasure meeting you, and continued success and with music and with bird watching. And we'll keep in
Thanks.
touch.
Lovely to meet you. Brilliant.
Right.
See you later.
Bye.